Welcome back to the Blood Prison Shakedown and episode number 2 of the new year. Happy New Year. We're trying to get some people in that are heading down to Transworld for Transworld 2025. We can't wait for it. Right now, everybody knows this guy. His name's Michael Chaille. Did I say that correct?
Yep, that's it.
All right, Michael, how you been?
Good.
Good. So let's get right into it. Michael runs Ghostride Productions. If you're a haunted attraction in America worth your salt, you've got some of his props in your haunted house for sure. Ghostride, top-notch, top-tier bodies. A lot of people use them because they're just gorgeous. I know we have tons of them. How's it going in Ghostride? How's it looking for Transworld this year?
This year, every year, our booth, we got a 70-foot wide booth. It's up against that back wall. Yep. We're about 10 feet deep. We kind of fudge that number a little bit, so we're a little deeper because we're there on that big wide aisle. But it's always kind of been like this huge potpourri of product, and we bring a lot of favorites from previous years and everything. But we're changing the way we're doing it because I don't know that people really understand how expensive trade shows are. Yeah. And so we're kind of bringing just the new stuff this year. That being said, we have over 33 items that are brand new, and that's not derivatives of the original items. So if we have we have these tabletop pieces that we're doing, we may have 8 different versions of that tabletop. So 33 new category or items that we're going to be doing. And then it's just been this thing like we don't wait till now to start to develop. We're developing stuff throughout the year.
Right.
And so we basically are going to change our focus on bringing product to the show that is brand new for the year. And that's pretty much what we have. We have, this is our 25th year. Yeah. So we have 25 years of product. And it's always kind of funny when people come up and say, hey, do you guys still make those frozen bodies? It's like, we came out with those in 2005. And yeah, it's not like we throw away the mold. We have so many molds that it's just a matter of a finish. And that's what we're kind of focusing on is if it's an existing product, we have several ways for you to order online or at the show or through your mobile device at the show. But we're going to show pretty much the all brand new product this year. So it's going to be a little bit different.
So how important is it when, let's say you're a startup company and you're going to go to Transworld for the first time, or you're not really new, but you're 3 or 4 years in, how important is it to bring new things each year? And do you go by a percentage like we bring, 30% of our booth is new every year? I mean, how important is that when you're vending at a trade show like Transworld?
Well, for somebody like us that's been around for 25 years, it may be different than if I was just bootstrapping for the first time. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of hardcore rules that I think you should do when you're going to that trade show, not another trade show, not a pet food trade show, this trade show. Okay. Right. When you go to Transworld, if you're talking about a new time vendor, you have to operate completely different than what you would do at another trade show. So are you talking about a new time product vendor?
I would say maybe, most people have been in it for a while. So like someone who's been in it, like you, for instance, like how much new stuff do you recommend you bring every year?
Well, just like I said, we're bringing all brand new stuff. And I'll tell you, the first thing that somebody says when they come up, other than, the thing about Transworld, there's a lot of people that have been our clients for, 25 years, a quarter of a century. So they're friends. And so the number one thing, if you're going to do anything at Transworld, before product, develop the relationships. These people are entrepreneurial, just like you. When you're coming there as a vendor, each one of these people, they're coming up to your booth. They're not necessarily a product rep or a buying rep or something from a different type of organization. These people are the ones that are writing the checks. They're interested in the product, and they have a fascination with Halloween. So they're just like you, and they're entrepreneurs. Yeah. And you have to deal with entrepreneurs differently than you would at just a regular consumer. So keep that in mind, that you have to develop a relationship with these people, and you have to kind of be invested in their event. Vic, I've come out to your event.
Yeah, I've been here.
And I'll tell you, when you see somebody's event, it takes on a whole different look. And I think now you and I can talk intelligently about your event way more than if you were trying to describe that one gauntlet room where you come around and there's just like there's stories of prison cells. And when you come in there and you have that kind of that switchback, when I went, you had that switchback. You could tell me all day long about that. But the reality is when I saw it, it's like, wow, okay, this is why he wants this way. This is why he requires things to be done up a certain way. And I think that's key. So once you get invested and you have a relationship with the client, then it doesn't really matter what you bring because they're going to know that you are you have kind of a vested interest in their business as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So bringing new stuff is literally the first thing that people ask when they come up to your booth at Transworld. It's like, hey, what do you got new? And if you don't have something new, you're kind of short-sighting yourself on what you can do for that show. So I would say that new stuff is always what they're looking for. And if you keep bringing the same stuff, and we do bring sometimes we bring product that's been favorites of ours. You know, like when we released the Mindy character, which those are in a lot of haunted houses. We always bring one because if we don't, people are going to say, what, you don't make the Mindy anymore? And it's like, yeah, we do. In fact, we've done 3 different generations of molds on that. We've used it so much. Yeah. So having some existing stuff that are favorites, like if you sell a lot, then you should bring that back because you're always going to have a new generation of people coming into that show, new haunt owners, not as many as before, but you're going to have to entice them with some of your older stuff. And so I would recommend that too. But new stuff is by far the key. I would recommend it.
So you mentioned, I mean, you have been here and, you know, in a lot of the surrounding areas here in Ohio. How much do you do that every year? Is that something that you like, all right, I was here this year, next year I'm going to hit the East Coast or the West Coast. Did you do that every year? Do you try to hit some haunts every October?
You want me to tell you where I went this year?
Sure.
I always start off at Haunted Overload at Eric Lowther's place because it's a phenomenal place. If you can get a chance, even if it's on an off day, you got to go see that event. It's phenomenal. It's well run. It will blow your mind as to what he can create with all volunteers and a limited production nights. It's wow. Every time I go, I'm blown away. So I always start there. And that's, you know, I got to fly into like Manchester or into Boston Logan. So I'm way on the East Coast anyway. So I just start there and then I make my way back. And this year I had to cancel one trip because I got sick. And then I doubled up and I didn't come back. So I was gone for like 3 weeks. And so I went from New Hampshire, did a couple of haunts up there, starting with Haunted Overload. Then I went down to Georgia to see Ben from Netherworld, Ben and Billy's event. From there, I went from Atlanta. I went to Puerto Rico and saw Soul Screams, which was Roberto's place, which was that was a fun experience. It's not what everybody can do, but man, he really showed me a good time. We got to see the island, and his event is a really cool event. Living on an island is a whole different ballgame. If you think you're strapped because, you know, you ran out of one thing or another, they have literally nothing on that island. He's got to really piece it together. And there's a big competition on that island for the haunted house attractions. So he was the original, and he's had quite a journey. The evolution of his events have been crazy, but now he's in this huge botanical garden, and it's a great event. It's really cool. So I was there for a couple of days, then flew back to New Orleans and went to Baton Rouge to see 13th Gates event. And then I went and saw Davey and Mindy up at the Rise event in Tickfaw. And then from there I went, I think I went from there to Arizona. My brother's running an event out there, Terror in the Corn, in just adjacent to Tucson. Went there for a couple of nights. And then from there, I went to LA, and then Chris Stafford met up with me, and I had talked to Roberto from Puerto Rico and his wife, Yahida, and they came out. They'd never been to LA. And I said, all right, we got to go to LA. So they met up with me, and we did Bruce Stanton's Reign of Terror. It's in Thousand Oaks.
Yep.
And then we did all of the 13th floor properties, including the Dark Harbor Queen Mary, which was the first year they brought that back. And we also went to Knott's Berry Farm. And
Wow.
then I went home. And that was like 2.5 weeks, something like that. But I stayed more at some of the other properties where they're friends. I stayed for a couple of days. So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
cool,
but
man.
I've been doing that forever, and it's primarily to see my product in those events. I don't go only to clients. I go to, if I'm driving by and I see a plywood sign on the side of the road that says haunted house and an arrow pointed, I'll stop in and I'll check it out.
Yeah.
So, if I got the time.
Why not? Yeah,
Yeah.
there's you'll find some of those diamonds in the rough when you just hit something that doesn't have the big billboards and everything, and like you said, a piece of plywood. Why not go check it out?
Yeah, I memean, you never know what you're going to see, and I'm looking for new ideas and more about what's not in haunted houses than what's in, because we don't really copy people's product as much as we like to innovate and do something new and different. So, what do people not have is what we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what sets you apart. I think, just from like, a head. Let's say just a severed head that's just whatever, just someone just straight faced. You've got the mouths open, you've got eyes in it, eyelashes, eyebrows, and it really adds that a new level of detail that everybody loves. You love to see it. The more real it looks, the better.
Yeah, I think that goes along with the expectation of the guest now. I mean, there's a fake is fake, but what we try to do, and listen, I love the spooky and the kooky stuff and the beast creatures and all that stuff. That's cool, but that's not our wheelhouse. We decided a long time ago that we want to stay in one vein. We want to, I always say, get vanilla right, then you can worry about Rocky Road. I just want to be really good at vanilla, and that is the realism. And if we can just focus on that and train our staff to have the layered painting and the eyelashes and the eyes and things like that, that's what sets us apart. And I think we just got to keep doing that. I don't need to venture off into these other things. We can, and we do sometimes, but I just like the realism.
Yeah, no, it's great. You guys are doing a great job on that. So speaking of, you brought up that's your 25th year. Let's go back to the early years. Like, what made you decide, you know what, I'm going to start my own company of bodies and props to get into this world of Halloween? What brought you there originally?
Well, we're a garage shop. That's what we were. Yeah. I was working in Orange County, California. That's where I was raised. And there was a friend that had a bar, and we were going to do some decorations for the bar. And so we had done that. I had also done some decorating up in Alaska, because I had done an internship for my degree at the time up in Alaska, and had done several years of changing the bar over. That's the thing about bars. Bars want those heavy dollar nights, like, New Year's Eve, Cinco de Mayo, and Halloween. They want those nights to make the bar transformative into something new. And so we were brought in with a pretty good budget to really do a kind of a haunted entrance and things like that, especially for the place up in Anchorage. It's Chilcoot Charlie's. It's a huge bar. And my brother and I got into that. And then once I came back down to Orange County, I started doing a little bit more of that. I thought, wow, this might be pretty cool. And at that time, I had met up with Michael Burnett at his facility in North Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And I ended up taking a class with him and then ultimately running his shop for 2 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
I didn't know how to do anything. I'll tell you, I didn't know how to do silicone or sculpting or anything, but he was very prolific with the jobs, because that was back in the day, early 90s, mid 90s, where he was doing stuff for Ruby's. He was doing stuff for Morris Costumes. He was doing videos. Every week we would have the choice of jobs to do. It was crazy. I just never wanted to not show up at work or even stay longer times, because you never knew what was going to come in. He had so much work. He was working on TV shows. I think you probably remember All That. He was the makeup artist on that. So there was always something going on with that. And so every day you were there, you were learning something new if you were paying attention. And at one point, I think we had 35 people working there, and I was in charge of, project management on that. And then from there, we did the Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood, we did that with 2 years, and I was stage manager for 1 year and working on the makeup production. I didn't do the makeup, but I set up the event, and we did a stage show as well. And then after that, I had left Burnett's, and then I worked directly for Universal doing the final 2 nights of their, or 2 years of their event, which I believe was in 2000 or 99. I can't remember, but we did all the props and effects for all 4 or 5 of those houses. And so that was a real learning curve as well, working
Yeah, I
it.
bet.
Yeah, we were doing like 4,000 people a night through one event.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah. I know how that goes.
Yeah.
So then, when you were doing stuff for Universal, how did you break off from there and get into your own thing as far as like Ghostride is concerned? And did you know about Transworld and things like that before you started?
I knew about Transworld through Burnett and the productions that he had done. We had always wanted to go to that show, and I just had all these ideas, and we never went because we were so busy. And so when when I broke away from Burnett wanting to do my own thing, and then Universal hired me on to do props back in 1998, 99. There was no industry of body forms and heads and things. I think Distortions had one single head
Right.
that had a beard, and it was an old man. It was like for $150, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So what we had done is a lot of the stuff for Universal, we had, we would bid out the projects, but we had done all those projects for them, but those mold assets remained ours. And because we sold it to them cheaper, and we would when Universal was sold to Vivendi, they stopped doing haunted houses in that
Okay.
year. So that was the last year. I think the last year was like the Rob Zombie House of a Thousand Corpses and all that. So and Clive Barker's maze. Those are the two big icon mazes that were there. So once that stopped, and we had all these assets, and I'm like, wow, maybe we should go to this trade show. And so
Yeah.
I went to the trade show. I was out of work, and I went to the trade show with another person that had a booth, and I just went and checked it out. I audited it in 1999, and I saw that, and from there I just said, no, we got to go. And so we did everything we could to come. And I had a partner at the time, Chad Beaudry, who was with me, and we had done a bunch of little projects. We were doing in LA at that time. We were doing a lot of TV shows, not really rentals, but like somebody call up and say, hey, can we get this or that? And commercials and things like that. We did some stuff for Nike and just piecework, kind of get it done as fast as you can kind of thing. And so I wanted to do something a little bit more stable because Hollywood was not stable. You would be busy and then you'd be dead and then busy and
Yeah.
dead. And I thought, well, maybe this Halloween could kind of fill the gaps. And so
Sure.
that's why we just started a company. Chad left after 2 years, but we had done our first trade show was in 2000. And there were some other people that helped us along the way. A guy by the name of Josh Cottrell. He's the one that developed our icon character that we had animation. We started off as an animation company. It's called The Kicker. And it
Oh.
was a single cylinder. And I mean, there's still people now that come up to me at the trade show and they still have that original kicker. They may have had to replace the cylinder or something like that, but
Yeah.
they've had that thing for 20 years and inside, outside, whatever. So
Sure.
they're all over the place. But we got out of the animation business primarily because it was just we had to pick a spot, and we just wanted to stick with the props.
So being in California, I know you went from there to up to Seattle, and now you're in Boise or in the Boise area. What are the moves like? What were the moves about? Like, why'd you go from L.A. to Seattle to Boise? What happened there?
The LA move to Seattle, it was time to leave LA. My wife's company, the company that my wife was working for, she was the 13th hire of like 200, and that company got bought by Microsoft. And at the time, Microsoft did not have a recurring revenue. All they did was they sold their software every year, and you had to re-up. And so they were looking for a company that sold that they could do a monthly charge to big businesses. And it was not to get too into it, but it was basically an email scrubbing service. And they were bought. And so they basically said, anybody that comes up, we got a sweetheart deal. And boy, was it sweetheart, because they moved everything for us. They didn't move my business, which we did 2 shipping containers from LA to Seattle. And we got, we got like a little 1,800 square foot unit or something like that. But that was in 04, 05. And we thought, well, we're going to be here for a while. And then things changed with Microsoft to the point where my wife wanted to start her own therapy business. And she left Microsoft after 10 years. And then at that point, we were just like, boy, Seattle's not the same. This was back in 2018. Yeah. So at that point, I thought that the move from LA to Seattle was going to be really difficult. Like, we're not going to be able to get resources. We're going to pay a ton in shipping. It's just going to be really hard. But it turned out to be not that at all. If you just plan a little bit better, you can get these items. And the internet really helped out as well. Because at the time, I was going all over Seattle when we first got there, going here to pick up leather, going over here to pick up whatever, taking trips to LA to pick up certain things. But I was doing that anyway, so it didn't really make that big of a deal for us to do the move eventually. So I thought back in 2018, we were looking at Seattle thinking, hey, this may not be the place to be. So I discovered Boise through a magazine saying top 10 places to live. And so that weekend I got on a plane and went to Boise and just drove around. Got a speeding ticket almost, because the freeways out here are 70, but not while you're going through the city. So at any rate, I just did a couple of trips through here and found a real estate agent and did about 8 trips out here to see what we could find as far as a shop. I took some of my crew. At the time, I had about 10 or 11 people on my crew in Seattle. Offered everybody, if they wanted to go, I would help them out if they wanted to go. Took about 4 people on a shop tour and to see what the city was like. One person took me up on it. She was here for about a year. But we moved from Seattle to Boise. We moved 13 containers of product and assets, mold assets. And we moved it ourselves, which was that 2019 was the most brutalist of years for the business and for my relationship. We just did it all ourselves, and it was really hard. So
yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
Plus, just getting ready for everything, along with a move like that, 13 containers, that's crazy.
Yeah, we pack those. What we do is we would pack those up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Old Dominion, which is our exclusive shipper, they would pick it up on Wednesday, and on Thursday, Friday, it would be here in Boise, and then we would fly in from Seattle to Boise, unload the container on Friday and Saturday, and then pack it into a unit here because our main unit wasn't available, and then we would fly back to Boise, and we did that for I think about 10 weeks straight.
Yeah.
So that was brutal. That was Airbnbs. Oh man, it was crazy. So
Boise's not like Seattle, like size wise, obviously. Do you like that better? Is it harder to find some, like, to crew the shop and everything? How's that going?
The crew was easy to find first here because we came in and we literally hired 10 people right off the bat, and they were all really good. This and I am not for everybody. It's a totally different business. Yeah. Do you have to be artistic? No. Do you have to follow instructions? Absolutely. We'll teach you everything you need to do. But some people think it's going to just be, hey, it's Halloween every day, and it's like, no, we're making stuff.
Yeah.
And if we're not making monsters, we're not making money, and so it can't be all fun and games. I think it's I try to develop a culture that is a fun culture to be in and a creative culture. But at the end of the day, we still have to make product, and you still have to show up on time, and you still have to clean up your area and all that stuff. And it really takes a full year to train somebody to understand the Halloween cycle. There is a cycle. And, we get November and December off. I would have loved to have been in my 20s and know that I could get encouraged to have 2 months off for the year. If you save your money right, you do the overtime right, and then there's also policies here in the state and in Seattle that if you have a guaranteed job, you could be laid off and still get 80% of your money or something like that without doing any work, as long as I promise to hire you back. And so it's almost like a paid leave every year. So some people take up on it and some people don't.
Yeah.
But after our first year here, I think people realized that it's not for them. And I agree. If it's not for them, it's not for them. And then we just move on. And so several people moved on. Some people we had to get rid of just because it wasn't the right fit. But
Sure.
right now it's so hard. And I talk to other haunted house people and other vendors that sell product, and it's just so hard to find somebody that's long term.
Yeah.
So, and
It really is.
and by the way, we don't work weekends and we don't work overtime. We try not to, because the philosophy is if you're working overtime, it's either just before the trade show or we did something wrong. So
Yeah.
we've tried to really knock that down so that people can have a reliable, we do a 10 to 7 shift here. So we avoid all traffic. So we
There you go.
try to make it so it's easier on people to get stuff done. So
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like, a 10 to 7 shift. That could be interesting. But that's great. I mean, so let me ask you this. Where do you get your creativity? How did you know going in, like, I really enjoy doing this. I watched movies as a kid. I, made my own costumes. Where did it start for you when it came to the creation end of it?
I really like that part of the story that you just told than the reality.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fitting in and finding a need for what
Yeah.
people need is where you're really going to make the money. I mean, back in '05, when we first started out and we were bootstrapping from the beginning, it was difficult. It's like our prices were a little higher. We had to come all the way in from California to Chicago for the trade show, and we were begging people to buy the product and things like that. And basically around '05, we just got this attitude that if it's too expensive, maybe it's just not for you. And it's not that it's expensive; it's just that you're not ready to buy this product, or maybe your event isn't up to the level of to be able to afford this much for a product. I admit it's expensive, but if you look at, and my buddy Tattoo, he came into our booth one year. I didn't even know Tattoo at this time, and I was talking to somebody about our pigs, which we introduced in 2005. This was this was probably 2013, 2012. I don't know, somewhere around there. And Tattoo was standing there. I'd not even been introduced to him. And I was talking to somebody, and Tattoo just interrupted as we were talking about why our pigs were so expensive. And Tattoo says, listen, they may be pricey, but you'll never have to buy them again. And so if you amortize that over the time, we've had these pigs for 5 years and they just look brand new. We maybe put a little blood on them. And so that was kind of reassuring to that client, saying, listen, I may spend $100, $200, $300 more, but to have it last for 6 years, that's a benefit. And so that's where we started saying, well, maybe the pricing is correct.
Yeah.
So,
well, in anything, you get what you pay for. You know what I mean? And if you want, I mean, you're not going to buy. You go to a nice store or the Dollar General. You know what I mean? You're going to get Dollar General. You know what I mean? So I mean, prices are what they are. Especially now, people got to understand that with everything that's been happening over the last few years. So the pricing's got to be difficult as far as making sure you're priced right. But I think competitively, it's all pretty standard there at Transworld. Everybody knows, like, you got to pay a premium price for the premium props.
Well, no, because there's a lot of people that try to match prices thinking they got the same thing. Yeah. So, like, if you dissect one of our props, our costumes are not store-bought or China-made. We make those ourselves. Now, why do we do that? Well, because when we were trying to put the China-made costumes on our product, first of all, they're very flimsy. They're not finished the right way, and they rip as we're putting them on our characters. So we add zippers, we add Velcro, we add things to make it easier to install. So that's one thing. We also, when we first started the business, or when we were consulting with Universal, we had a higher standard with Universal because Universal Studios, Hollywood, they are their own city and they have their own fire department and they have their own kind of planning. And so when we were developing these mazes, with Chris Williams was the art director, still is,
Mm-hmm.
for Hollywood. When we were doing these, we had to go by their standards for construction. So, and a lot of times that was way higher than what a regular haunted house would get away with. I'm not talking about plastic on the walls or anything like that. I'm talking about, having enclosures for the controllers and, having the cylinders protected and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
we always knew that if we had a body form that we were hanging in a hallway, it wasn't made with just like a piece of rope and a block inside of it. It had to be chain all the way up and down throughout the whole body.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're looking, I guess what I'm trying to say is when you're talking to a vendor at Transworld and you see something that you want, regardless of the price, you should be asking questions like, what's the armature made of? Is it rope? Is it chain? Is it all foam with something added later? You're not asking for how, the secrets, but, is this thing going to last? And I don't believe anything that anybody says. Do a little investigating, because these things are getting, it's literally $1,000 for a stand-up character now, minimum, and that's a lot of money, but
Sure.
it costs over $2,000, over $2,500 to have a character, or to have an actor in that same position. It's going to cost you in payroll and disability and whatever else you do, whether you're paying
Mm-hmm.
payroll or not. You're going to spend about $2,000 anyway. So,
Yeah.
if you can get a body form that's going to last 2 years, and that is going to mimic an actor, then, and that's what a lot of people are asking for now, then you're going to be, you're going to be in the black after year 2. So it's got to last for a couple of years.
Absolutely. Yeah, and your props always do seem to, they got a lot of longevity, which again makes them great. So 25 years, man, that's like, I was kind of just thinking about that, and I'm like, man, that's like, this whole 2000, it's 2025, you're going to your 25th year. How is that, what kind of journey has that been for you and your company, just 25 years? Have you ever been like, I don't know if we're going to make it?
Yeah. Back when we were really starting out, that was tough. It was before we got to Transworld. I guess, if people are wanting to become an exhibitor, you really have to fight for those first years. You have to do, first of all, do what you want to do, not because you think it's going to make money, because you'll believe in it more. You'll have more passion for it. That's why we do realistic. And if somebody says that our stuff doesn't look realistic, well, prove to me that it doesn't. It's got eyelashes, it's got underwear, and you don't even see the underwear, but we've put it on there. We put bras, and then we put a shirt over the bra. And so, it looks like a person. And we're passionate about making them look more and more real with the little details, tattoos, piercings, whatever, high quality wigs. And, our wigs don't typically look plasticky.
Yeah.
You just got to be passionate about what you're going to do. And then when you're talking to somebody at the Transworld show, if you're an exhibitor, you're not faking it. It's quality is right there. You believe in it. If you're trying to be a huckster and just try to blow out product or whatever at a high price, good luck with that. I don't know how you sleep at night. You gotta, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
These forums are brutal.
Yeah.
Other vendors
Yes.
come to you and they're brutal, and you just got to have good quality product.
Yeah.
So you got to believe in
Absolutely.
it, and you got to do your own art. You have to consider it art. Somebody, Anthony from Original Sin, he has blown up in the last couple of years, and he took his product from small dolls to full size standing product, and he went from one booth to, I think he has 3 or 4 now, or even more. I don't know. I haven't talked to him for a little bit, but he just blew up because I think he started to take it way more seriously as to the kind of the goal that he wanted to do. It was no longer these craft dolls, which are really cool, but you can only do so much with a doll, but with these standing figures that he has, and the art looks really cool. So that's that cool factor is what really brings people to stop at his booth and to take a look and to purchase. I see a lot of his stuff at haunted houses right now.
So speaking of the art end of things, like, are you hands on with all of that? I mean, do you sculpt, mold, everything? Did are you doing that like even today?
Yes.
So when did you start doing that? Like, did you like grow up like wanting to sculpt and things, or did you realize, God, I'm really good at this, and just start going? How did that start for you?
I've never said, God, I'm really good at this. That's number one. We are our worst critics on any of this product, because we're constantly fighting to make it look right. And the problem is that I have to tell my staff is we're trying to make it look right under white light. And
Yeah.
when you get our product, you look at it, you're like, wow. Hopefully you say wow.
Mhm.
And then you put it into your event, and then you shut off all the lights. So, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
dealing like you, Vic. You'll put our product in your event, and it'll probably have 20% of the light
yeah,
that we created it under. And that's another hard thing about Transworld is that we're creating it under white light. We're fooling people
mhm,
on our characters under 100% white light. And if we
yeah,
could do that, then you can only imagine what you could do in a darker environment. But
yeah.
I didn't know how to do anything at all, period, until I started working at Michael Burnett's shop. And I think part of that was that every day you would come in and there would be something new. I mean, we could be shooting a film, which we did Strangeland for, uh, what's
Yeah.
it?
D.
Twisted Sister.
Snyder. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. D. Snyder came in and we did that movie. We did a lot of videos at the time, and so we'd be doing live casting or we'd be doing, certain appliances or whatever. And so it was always something. That was the thing about Burnett is he always had stuff coming in. And if you missed a day, who knows? I mean, I remember one time I was going to take the time off and the weekend off. And then that week, Franz Harari came in and said, "Hey, I'm doing this event in 2 weeks for like Chevrolet. We want to make he was a magician, and we
Mhm.
wanted a Corvette to appear on stage. So we had over the weekend, we had put this whole contraption that opened up like a regular magician's gag, and that would surround. It would be empty, and then all of a sudden, this Corvette would appear out of nowhere. And it's a typical gag, whatever. You can go online and see how it's done, but I didn't want to miss that. And so I stopped, I stayed all weekend. And
Mhm.
so, anytime you missed Burnett's at that time, you were going to miss something. And I was trying to get as much information as possible, as whatever I could learn how to do.
Right on. So you learned all of that there. That's
Well,
pretty
to
good.
start, I mean, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a start. That was where there were so many things and materials and equipment and things like that was accessible. I mean, I think we had about a 5,000 square foot shop and then an ancillary shop off to the other side. And
Yeah.
it was a fantastic learning experience.
So your shop now, I mean, how big of a shop are you guys equipped with there in Boise?
We have 7,000 square feet right now. And then we just took over the lease next door for another 2,000, and so
All right.
we'll have about 9,000 and change, and primarily because we have so many assets of molds and what we call masters, the actual original piece. I have
Mhm.
pretty much every master I've ever had for the last 25 years. I think there's 3 that are gone, but we have all of those in a separate location. And if something goes down, we can take that mold or that original piece and then mold a new piece from it. So they are from original castings, all of our molds.
Yeah.
So we got to
Yeah.
house that, and so we brought it closer. The money's going to be a little bit more per year, but I get rid of those storage units, and I get rid of I think there's a lot of things that people don't think about when they get into this business, and distortions. And Ed and Marcia, we talk about this all the time, that you don't think about the box that something has to get shipped in. You just like, oh, I want to make this cool thing. And then you're
Yeah.
like, I can't even get that box, or it's going to be $300 to ship at UPS. And so and then where do you keep all your boxes?
Yeah.
How do you keep supplies? How do you keep paint? Our main paint manufacturer during COVID, stopped making the paint. 100% stopped. And that's our paint is a very specific type of paint. And so that was very tricky, but thank God I had stored up a bunch of material over the years that I was able to weather that storm. But I had to weather no paint from my vendor for 2 years. So
Wow.
where do you keep all that? You know, so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you have to,
Storage is important for sure.
yeah, you have to think about that and think about what you know you we don't want to create something that's so unique and then we can't find the product to make it again.
Yeah.
So there's always this kind of weird juggling that you have to do.
Yeah. For sure. And you brought up COVID, and I think that was rough on everybody from from vendors side and from haunted attraction side as well. How did you guys pull through it during COVID? How'd that go for you?
Um, Man, that was really tough because every day it was something new. It
Yeah.
was can't get the paint. Then it's like can't get certain materials every day, and then you'd have somebody come in and said, "Hey, my roommate was tested positive," and then all of a sudden we'd all stop, and then we'd all take tests, and then we'd have to shut down for a couple of days or something like that. So
Yeah.
we were pretty diligent on it. We never stopped working. We did file for PPP. 100% of the money that we got in from PPP went to our staff's salaries and it went to rent. So we never stopped paying rent to our landlord and we never stopped paying our employees. And that's where all
Mhm.
that money went to. And we got 2 PPP loans that weren't staggering amounts, but it helped us go through. So that was good. I kept in touch with a lot of vendors
Yeah.
and other manufacturers to see what was going on and how are they doing on supplies. What are they going through? And so there's a little network of helping people out, which was good. And it's easier to be in a boat adrift if you know there's some other people in there with you. And that's
Mhm.
kind of how we all felt. I mean, we all felt the pain of haunted houses not being able to open or whatever.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that during that period of time, some of our lower end clients, when I say lower end, I mean they were buying $2,000, $3,000 a year. They ended up, and they were just kind of a home haunt or a smaller venue. They blew
Mhm.
up, and they stayed open and they blew up, and now they're one of our best clients. And so that
Nice.
happened with a couple of people that they were able to kind of lean into COVID, whether it was because they weren't going to their day job or whatever, but they were able to lean in, and there was some definite growth that happened for those people. So that was good.
That's good. Yeah, definitely. I mean, COVID was. I'm glad that's over. I don't know about you, but I'm so glad that is over. I know I had to work from home for for a few months. It was here, and I remember I'm thinking, man, I am getting so much done working from home because I don't have the side distractions of people coming over here and knocking on the door. But after about 2 weeks, I was like, oh my God, I've got to go back. I was ready to go back to work.
We did a lot of, there was like holes in the shop floor and, electrical things. And so for a couple of weeks, I was the same way. I was just like, hey, now's the time to take care of this stuff.
Yeah.
Then it got to the point where it's like, well, we got to get stuff rolling. And we had to redo a lot of our thinking on our product because at that point it kind of forced us to, how are we going to do this without going to a trade show?
Yeah.
And all of our product, by the way, when COVID was announced and the trade show shut down, we had already shipped our product out. So that the very next day, the very next morning, we had just finished our truck. It just got shipped out on like a Thursday, and Friday morning, Jen gave me a call from Transworld and said, "Hey, it looks like we're going to have to shut the show down." So I'm on the phone calling Old Dominion. Hey, bring that thing back. It had to go all the way to Salt Lake City, I think, and come
Yeah.
back. And now we have all this product, which, by the way, we had nowhere to put that product. I mean, it was huge. I think there's a video online, a YouTube video of us where we showed this whole quiver of all of our product. And there's one of the, we had introduced a character named Sherry, or no, Cher. And
Yeah.
we had brought that model back in for the video shoot. And we sat her down and I introduced, hey, here's all our product, can't go to Transworld, whatever. And then I walked off stage and then we just panned the product. And
Mhm.
then the actual actress was there and she looked around left and right and got up. And everybody thought it was one of our characters because it was the same
Yeah.
guy. So, we had all that product and it's like, well, how do we get rid of this product? People aren't opening
Yeah.
up. So we tried different things, ready to ship, things like that. We were able to get rid of it all. to people that wanted it. But there was a time where it's like there was so many boxes in here, just all filled up. We didn't know where to go.
Yeah, that was rough. I remember that kind of was the, I guess if you would say trend. I saw a lot of vendors that didn't go to Transworld because they shut it down. Was just like we actually set our booth up in the one big space in our shop and just like did the same thing. We rolled through with all, this is what we got available and all that stuff. And it seemed it helped. I mean, it wasn't the same obviously, but it definitely helped out a little bit.
I'll tell you a funny story. COVID was just announced and the trade show was just canceled, and up popped Bose from Unit 70. Bo had done a video, and I'm like, holy crap, how did he get that thing up so fast? I mean, it literally was the next day and it was up. And I called Bo and I said, hey, how did you do this? And he's like, man, it was so lucky. We had decided to do this a long time. He was actually going to go to Transworld that year. Mm-hmm. And so he had done a video of everything a couple of weeks prior. And it just happened to be completely done and ready to go by the time the show got canceled. And he popped it right up. And I was just like, man, that's so brilliant. So, yeah, I mean, it was just a way of distributing that product through the video channel, which I think really, he doesn't need any help. He is such a great artist and a great businessman. But I think it really helped him sell that product because it was immediate. He was first to market on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it was the thing to do for sure that year. But again, I'm glad I'm behind that. And speaking of like something I've been wanting to ask you as well, because I hear things from different people, about the trends and what's hot, what's new. It seems like, every year or so, there's like something that is like people want. Where do you think that starts? Like, I know the last couple of years, the pumpkin thing's been hot. Jack-o'-lanterns have been, big sellers, or aliens, or, when Walking Dead zombies were huge and all that stuff. Where do those trends start? Like, how does that happen in this industry? Is like, what is going to be the next big thing? You know what I mean?
Well, that's the big debate, right?
Yeah.
I think our business, the manufacturing business or the artistic business, is dependent on a client buying the product. But the client buying the product is somewhat dependent on what's going on in the world. And so for me to make an interpretation, like in the early years, we just wildcatted. We just like, let's just make whatever we want, like we'll need this or whatever. And I think you have to have a more logical approach to it. And one of the ways is seeing at haunted houses what they don't have and talking to haunted house owners and like, hey, what would you want? And, a lot of people are very generic about it. So that's where a good relationship with the venue or the event staff, even just the techs, they'll tell you everything. That's the thing about haunted houses. If you talk to somebody as a manufacturer, they want to tell you what they need because they don't want to have to develop it. Could they develop it? Yeah, sure. Anybody can do a life cast or do all this other stuff, but it's like, to what end? I mean, I can do a life cast and I'll get 100 pulls out of it. But if somebody wanted a life cast of like a Mindy and they do it themselves, how many of those Mindys can you have in one haunted house?
Right.
And if you bore out the cost of that, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, you're not really going to get your money back on it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, a lot of haunted house events, it's just like, it's cheaper just to buy something, rather than keeping somebody on staff. And it's all doable, but do you want to do it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, there's always like, we're always like, when we're building something or anything like that, we try to sit down and think, now, is it going to be cost effective to build this, or should we just find one and buy it? It doesn't even have to be a Halloween prop, like in our kitchen area in our house. So do we make a table or do we just buy a table, or do we, you know what I'm saying? We're doing this canopy bed thing that we've settled on making because we feel we can make it and it'll be more cost effective that way. But there's always a balance. Like, should I just buy this or should I make it? That's always somewhere where you can get stuck on, in certain aspects of what you're doing when you're like doing a new build.
Well, let's be honest. You can make anything.
Yeah.
But is it going to be worth your time?
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's the big thing. And so, when we get ready for Transworld, our first things, we must have had 50 or 60 items that we wanted to come out with.
Hmm.
And some of the things are things we've already developed, and so it's a very easy lift to get that into production. Other things are just adaptations of something that really worked or something that we didn't think hit right, and so we changed it. Because I don't think a lot of people realize that when you bring out 30 items to the trade show, you could probably guarantee that one or two are going to be superstars.
Yeah.
Okay, not even, and there's not even a guarantee. You're hopeful that one or two are going to hit, but you have development on 33 other items, which is very
Yeah.
costly. And so I think a lot of people in the beginning, if we're talking to the people that want to make stuff and go to the show, don't fall in love with your product. Be pragmatic about it. Say, I don't know how many times we've done projects where we brought them to the trade show and we saw something that was similar. I mean, it was similar. It was by no way of trying to find out what somebody else is doing and doing our own version. It's just that we basically developed something the same time somebody else did, and we
Hmm.
didn't bring it out. It's like we don't want that to be a topic of conversation at
Yeah.
the show, because it was and I'm not talking about something simple. I'm talking about a very animated piece that we were doing at the time, and we just like, why do we want to mess with it, And so we didn't
Yeah.
bring it out. And you have to be pragmatic about your product development and saying to yourself, is this still worth it? Do I still
Yeah.
want to do this? Is it something that somebody, another thing is like some things are so easy to replicate that it's not worth it. Why you're just telling somebody how to do something and you're going to be very limited in what you can sell.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you kind of have to abandon a project and say, it's not worth my time. So
Sure. Well, I always ask everybody, do you get any inspiration from like we're big horror movie fans. Are you a big horror movie fan? Do you get inspiration from there?
uh, I did not grow up as a horror fan. I think the thing that got me plugged in the most was the fact that we were literally one city over from Buena Park, which was not Scary Farm.
Okay.
That's what got me involved. I've always been kind of a behind the scenes kind of guy. Just wanting to do the stuff behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
getting involved with that, I never worked for Knott's, but we went. I got a whole other theory of why it was great. But as far as the artistic side, that's how I got involved.
Yeah.
And in Southern California at the time, the church was doing the Catholic Church was doing campus life, which when we were growing up, it was so scary that high school older brothers and sisters of friends that we had would tell us of these stories of campus life, and it was sounded so scary. I never even went into it. If you were a Southern California in the late '70s, early '80s, you would know what campus life was because their brochures were everywhere. They had no labor costs because it was all parishioners. They had no cost for the building because it was somebody in their that went to that church that donated the property, but they just got away
Okay.
with everything. So
Wow.
eventually that went away. I think they changed management in the church organization, but man, those were just the posters were scary.
Yeah.
So as a kid,
Yeah.
you know,
Of course. When you're a kid, everything seems more real.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? It's like I'm actually gonna like die in here, so I don't know if I should do it.
yeah, yeah. But that's where we pretty much got our inspiration was going to
cool.
other events, and then we did our own events as kids in the garage.
Yeah.
Nothing like now. I mean, now some of these elaborate displays are just phenomenal. But
Oh
just
man.
something to scare the neighborhood kids, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Nowadays it's such a production. It's such a there's so much eye candy, even if it is blood and splayed open or whatever. But it's like everything from your lights to your sound to your props to your actors, the makeup. I mean, it's all got to be, especially if you're a large attraction. It's got to be on point now, and it's just how it's changed over the years from like the 80s and 90s to now. It's phenomenal. You know what I mean, on many levels.
Right. I mean, yeah, you have this whole segment of Transworld that comes in that are just haunted house enthusiasts or home haunters.
Yeah.
And, they have They have a lot of money. They have a lot of resources. They want to do this as an activity with their kids or with their
Yeah.
neighbor. And they're spending 5, 10, 15, $30,000 every
Yeah.
year. So
And it's bleeding over to other holidays. Like we do a Christmas event here that this was our biggest year ever. We almost sold the thing completely out. So now we're talking maybe do 2 weekends at Christmas. Some haunts do a Valentine's Day. I know some guys here in Ohio are doing Valentine's, halfway to Halloween. It's like it's really expanding and just. I mean, I love it. I love it because of that. It makes it fun. Does that help you on your end as far as like, well, hey, we can make some Christmas or Valentine's Day props? Do you go in that direction?
no.
No. All October.
Well, I'll tell you, I think we could do some things. Like, first of all, if you called up Vic and said, "Hey, man, we're doing Valentine's Day. What can you do for us?" Well, then we talk back and forth about, well, what
Yeah.
about, one of our characters in a toga with an arrow, right through the heart, that kind of thing. We
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
do that because we can fabricate that. But to put the resources in saying, hey, here's our Valentine section and here's our Christmas section, I'm a firm believer that a lot of people will do Christmas because they've got so much steam from their Halloween event that's like, man, we can make an extra $20,000-$30,000 if we do this. And
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, there's no real heavy lifting for a Christmas event because people are going to come because they want to see it with the lights. And it's the same thing as with a bar. All you have to do is change those rooms around a little bit or turn the lights off and put Christmas lights. It's a very easy lift for you guys to bring people in, and they want to see it that way. So it's easy money. Or you have somebody that says, man, we need to, it would be great if we can get a little bit more money coming in. Why don't we try a Christmas thing? I don't know that those, for us, I don't know if those events are something that we can capitalize on at that latest season because I'm traveling,
Yeah.
and we every now and then we'll get people in October wanting something, and we'll try to do the best we can. But I don't think it's really front of mind at Transworld saying, oh, and by the way, we're going to do St. Patty's Day. We're going to do a halfway to Halloween. We want to make sure we have these. And it's kind of difficult for the client to dictate to us the delivery schedule because sometimes you could call up and have 5 items and we have those in stock.
Yeah.
And it would just be a matter of a day putting those all together. And then you call up and you want one item and the mold may be damaged or we don't know where the mold is, which, that's a whole other thing of inventory. But it may take longer for a single item than it is for 5 items.
Yeah.
So I've tried doing the Christmas. If there was a lot of people asking me for it, I think I'd have a different response, but I just don't get the people asking for it.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
But Christmas is different than Krampus.
Yeah.
Krampus is a different thing.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but I mean, we do the Krampus thing, and you got to give the people what they want. And if they're not asking you for Christmas, stick to the Halloween stuff. But Transworld's coming up really soon. I know you're probably just under the gun trying to get everything done. So I want to thank you very much, Michael, for coming on the Blood Prison Shakedown with us. It's always great seeing you. It's always great talking to you. I can't wait to see you in St. Louis. And again, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll see you out of Blood Prison maybe in the next couple of years.
Ohio may be coming up. I mean, we did the Legendary Haunt Tour with Transworld last year, and I think they have enough room to do another Ohio now, rather than later. I'm lobbying for that, but
yeah, for sure.
They're doing someplace else, I guess. I don't know. But Ohio's a great place if you want to get up there and do some of these events. You can knock out maybe 3 events per night with, you'll have to do a little bit of driving, but it's definitely something you can do. So I love going to Ohio, and the events are really cool up there. So,
well, and there's a ton of them too, but let us know, man. Let us know if you are, coming in so we can meet up and, maybe get a bite or have a drink or something.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll definitely come early because the last time I went to your event, I think I got there at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. And your line went from all the way from where the entry was all the way out to the street. It was like 8 people wide. They were all food vendors and everything. And I think you and you, Brian Dembski, and I, we were walking around, and I couldn't believe it. And I think you guys didn't get out of there till like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. that night. But you guys
it was
the whole
between
time.
3 and 4. Yeah, that was what one of the last years we did, like kind of the normal thing. But people want to come, and see this building. I mean, aside when you add all the elements that we add to it for Halloween, but the building is a showstopper for sure.
What's absolutely mind-boggling to me is how in the world can you have that many people wait that long in line and have a tough time finding employees? I mean, if they're willing to just act, they could go into that event at any time on a slower night, and guest passes would not be a problem, I would assume, if they were good actors. I just see all of those thousands and thousands of people waiting it was bitterly cold that night as well. Waiting that long, and I'm like, wow, and they are having a tough time trying to find actors. That year
there we were for sure. We've actually turned it around a lot these last couple years. We've finished pretty good, but it always tells when the building's this big, you got to have a lot of people to fill the spots. And
absolutely,
props are amazing and animatronics are great, but you need those actors, man. They really bring it to the next level.
Yeah, I think the prison is a really cool theme that it really kind of sets you with the parameters of how you have to do it. But I think it's also one of the hardest events to put on in an existing building, because prisons are built without blind spots. Everything's 90 degrees. How many cells can you look back in and see a character or an animation? So I think it's hard. So when you guys pull it off and do those, you have to kind of do these wonky things where you have a switch back and forth, but they work. And so I think you guys pull it off.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And again, I appreciate you coming on, man. I don't want to keep you too much longer. But thanks again, and we will talk to you down in St. Louis, man. Be careful heading down there.
Yeah, I get there way earlier than anybody else, and we stay longer than anybody else. So, but yeah, we're going to bring our A game and plenty of new stuff.
Awesome. Can't wait to see it, man.
All right. We'll see you, Vic.
All right, Michael, thank you.
All right, bye.